Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Wake Up Mid-Missouri, 93.9 The Eagle, 950 KWOS. I'm John Marsh, and another day, another Monday, ready to go with Wake Up Mid-Missouri. And a special guest in with us, co-hosting with us today, Casey Burns. Casey, welcome in.
Thanks. Good morning, guys.
Talk to us a little bit. We've got Brad Jones from NFIB back with us as well.
Good morning, JM.
Casey, give us a little background on yourself. The few folks out there don't know that you're heavily involved in the political side of things.
Yeah, so I've worked political campaigns in Missouri and surrounding states in some capacity or another since 2012. I started my own Republican fundraising firm back in 2020, and that's my primary focus today. So little campaign talk, little fundraising talk, little national politics maybe thrown in there. It'll be a fun morning.
Yeah, we've got quite the lineup this morning. Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman, we understand, will be joining us about 6:30. Our buddy Scott Faughn from Missouri Times will be with us a little after 7. Senator Bill Eigel, and you never know because he never has a strong opinion on where he stands on any of the issues.
Never.
The senator will be in at 7:35. State Rep Rudy Veit at 8:10, and Will Wheeler from Mizzou, correct, at 8:35.
Will Wheeler is Senator Karla Eslinger's chief of staff. He's going to talk to us a little bit about pre-filing.
I also found that other Will Wheeler online, John.
That's a Will Wheeler we've worked with before on the Mizzou side of economics and all, and so we'll go from it. Maybe we can get Will on later in the week and talk to him a little bit about that big bowl bid. How about that?
It's an exciting time at Mizzou right now. It really is.
It was quite the weekend, wasn't it, John? I mean, it really was. We had all kinds of stuff going on. We had the Living Windows on Friday night, which was beautiful, other than the rain and the cold. The drone thing. Did you see the drone thing?
I did not. I was.
It was really
in
neat.
Boonville at the boat.
Oh, okay.
Weren't we, Hannah?
Full disclosure. All right.
Yeah.
It was fun. And then we had the Christmas parade. The 2-hour Christmas parade.
The parade was huge.
It was
wasn't
long.
It?
Yes. I was watching from the happy confines of the NFIB office, which is on the second floor. It is one of the great viewing spots in Jefferson City.
Right
you
on
had
High
the best
Street.
spot in town for that.
Yes.
I was at the second best place at presiding Commissioner Bushman's office in the Chamber of Commerce.
That's what I was going to say. And the Christmas extravaganza with the commissionator and yourself and Hal and others. Thank you all for inviting me. It was fun up there. Yeah.
It was fun.
How did the Missouri Times window go, Casey?
You know, I am so sad. I actually had to be out of town for a fundraiser and missed it. But if you all haven't seen Scott's photos on Twitter or Facebook, you've got to go check it out. Gussie looks exactly like Ralphie right now. Had the glasses on. They did. It was a perfect depiction of it. And I think they didn't freeze to death. They're still, kicking this morning.
And Millie was in the bunny suit, wasn't she?
She was. She was. It was adorable. She was probably a little less thrilled about it. But, that's 14.
Yes.
Casey, let's jump right into it and talk a little bit about Missouri politics right now because, bill filing started just this past Friday. And like we said, we'll have some lawmakers in with us to discuss where that's all headed. I guess the big story looming large for everybody is what's going to happen with Speaker Plocher.
It seems like as of now, the news surrounding Speaker Plocher has kind of died down. He has brought in Rod Jetton to be his chief of staff, and Rod, with a military background, with a background himself as Speaker of the House, I think has brought in a really steady hand to Speaker Plocher's office. And I'm confident that they're going to get session rolling in a decent manner. Look, this is a huge election year, and how far any legislation moves will be a big question, particularly for the Senate, which it'll be interesting to see. We can talk to Senator Coleman about that and Senator Eigel. But most folks I've talked to aren't really optimistic in getting a lot of legislation passed this year. But I think the House is going to head in a good direction. And it also helps that they've got John Patterson as their floor leader, who has shown just nothing but calm and stability throughout all of this. He's not one to jump to conclusions and, go with the wind on all the demands he gets from his 100-plus caucus members. He makes slow, deliberate decisions and leads with a steady hand.
We've heard rumblings out there, and we're not in the business of reporting rumor or anything. I guess the question is, do you think the investigation and ethics meetings and all this will wrap up before lawmakers return in regard to the speaker?
Well, I think they've got a meeting this week, don't they, the ethics committee? So I guess it will depend kind of on their findings or how things go this week. I hope that they get things wrapped up, and get out of town before Christmas, get to spend that with their families, and have a resolution or a solution of some sort to present to the House before session starts.
It's one of those interesting times of year when we head into the mystery days of the holidays, especially after bill filing started the other day. Notice that, when we talked to the governor about a week ago on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, he was not even optimistic about anything large happening because he's been through plenty of sessions during election years himself.
Yeah, I think that's right. That seems to be the general consensus amongst most legislators you talk to, political observers, consultants, the lobby corps. And frankly, if we're looking at bodies that are both controlled by Republicans that claim to be small government conservatives, I don't know that us not passing a ton of legislation is the worst thing that can happen for this state.
Well, and, I've been doing this forever, and I look at, some of it's real interesting in a big election year, because some years they have managed to coalesce because they want to go home and tell people this, and we got this accomplished. And then other years, probably like this one, nobody wants to vote on anything that they're going to get called out on. And so it's I think it's sort of a perfect storm, actually, this session for not doing a whole lot. They do have the budget. The Constitution says they have to pass a balanced budget. So I think that might be a focal point of what they need to get done. And hopefully, I don't know when they came up with the fact that you had to get the budget done a week before the end of session, but that was the most brilliant thing anybody ever came up with, because you don't want to be messing with how many billions of dollars of budget the last day of session.
Wake Up Mid-Missouri on 93.9 The Eagle, 950 KWS. Casey Burns and Brad Jones with us this morning.
John, Brad, and Casey, great job as always, and I'm glad to have Casey and Brad in the studio. I'd point out the House Ethics Committee is going to meet, and this is posted on the House website, Wednesday afternoon at 2. Looks like virtually all of that will be closed. The only thing we know is to, quote, discuss a personnel inquiry and a House ethics complaint, 23-01. They don't go beyond that. I do believe that does involve the Speaker of the House, though, Dean Plocker, so we'll find out. The one thing that I think is intriguing, there's a lot of different bills for the Jefferson City audience on KWS. The biggest issue to me is the state employee pay, and Mike Bernskatter made that very clear. But the bill that stands out to me the most for the Columbia audience involves Danny Santulli, the hazing incident here in Columbia. And Travis Smith, who's a Mizzou graduate from way down in southern Missouri's Dora, basically on the Missouri-Arkansas border, has filed that anti-hazing bill again. John, as you'll recall, the Speaker of the House, when we had him on, he made it very clear, in no uncertain terms, that he didn't like this bill. It looks like it's been tweaked a little bit, but I will be interested to see if this bill gets any traction. We'll see what happens.
That's a good question because, when we did have him on, it was he made no bones about it, did he, Brian?
No. He basically, his concern was, and again, I'd read that bill literally 100 times and hadn't read it that way until he pointed out his concern was that if someone hazes someone, and remember, for people who don't remember, Danny Santulli, apparently, we don't know this for sure. We'll find out in the trial. The family says he has brain damage. He can't speak. I believe he may be blind. We'll find out a lot of that at these hazing trials coming up. Virtually all of the guys, by the way, have pleaded guilty to misdemeanors. So there are a couple that are come up for trial. But his argument is if someone hazes someone under the bill last year, if you haze someone terribly, like allegedly what happened to Santulli, then if you called 911, he didn't feel like you should be able to get immunity. So the bill looks like it's been tweaked a little bit. So we'll see what happens. It's similar, but it has been tweaked a little bit, and we'll just see if that has anything to go. There are a couple other interesting bills, as you both know. I believe it's cashew chicken. Jamie Bragg down in the Springfield area has that, and then there's a lot of other interesting, kind of fun bills. Most of those probably don't go anywhere on their own, but they all seem to come back at the last week of the session when it comes to state symbols. So some of those we may hear back again in May.
Thanks a lot, Brian. You know, you took my shtick. I had this whole thing going on the most important bill that has been introduced so far, and it's going to generate more debate than any other bill.
Yeah.
Is the cashew chicken is the official dish of Missouri. I think there's probably areas of the state that are going to stand up on that one. I'm just saying.
And I've actually got this posted on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page this morning. If our listeners want to go weigh in, we might cover that in What's Hot with Hannah a little later.
Hannah, I might go with Bush Burgers. You know, I would put that up there. I mean, I understand. I love cashew chicken, and I understand that it was created in Springfield, and I know it has Missouri roots.
You
and all
obviously didn't attend Missouri State, Mr. June.
but come on. We do a little barbecue in this state too. There's a fried chicken. There's a lot of runners up on the old cashew chicken bill. So.
Well, and the interesting thing about it's basically a one-sentence bill for people who haven't read it, Brad and team. I mean, in one sentence, it says this, Bill 1624 from Representative Jamie Bragg. It designates cashew chicken, this is the key here, folks, quote, is the official dish of the state of Missouri, end of quote.
Is the word, yeah.
Exactly. And Representative Sarah Unsicker on Twitter, I think over the weekend, she basically was asking, where can you get cashew chicken? A couple people responded, there are a few places in St. Louis, but it's primarily, like you said, Springfield. But,
Springfield thing, yeah.
To me, I always think of cashew chicken as Springfield, but again, we'll have those are bills we always have fun with, guys.
Hulk Tribe in with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
big three and believe me, the EVs have caused a lot of headaches. Everybody, I think, and I had a nice talk with him, and I said, here's the deal. If we can get those things at 1,000 miles and you've got a battery, what are you going to do with the battery when it's gone? So some of the environmental stuff it seems like it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction to this is going to be the end-all be-all for the environment, where I think if you mine down a little bit, no, it's not. And ultimately, people have to want to buy it. I mean, you can try to shove it down people's throats and say, you should really love having these electric cars, but
well, the price points on them too right now.
Right. I mean, there's things that need to be fixed before we're all driving electric cars.
Are they still like spontaneously combusting in parking garages, or is that something they ironed out?
Tesla had some challenges with that.
Yeah, they did.
And then there's that, Hannah. and then there's that minor problem.
I'm just of the opinion that when the federal government mandates anything, it's only ever going to cost me more money at the end of the day.
Well, that is absolutely true.
I talked to the guys at Fulton Ford a while back, who are advertisers with Zimmer Communications, and they said the manufacturer, if you want to carry electric vehicles and the EVs that are in their product lineup, you have to sink some big bucks to revamp your service department,
right,
to be able to handle all that. And they said they weren't ready to commit to all that.
Well, and you've got the whole infrastructure. I mean, that one step from that too, John, is if you're a small mom and pop convenience store and you're expected to put in charging stations,
there you go.
Those things are expensive, and not all small businesses are willing or able to go that extra mile to put those things in.
And I was just thinking, selfishly, I had to drive from St. Louis to the Boot Heel to Jeff City this weekend. I'm not sure I could have found anywhere where I was at in the Boot Heel for this fundraiser and some work-related events to charge my car. And I wouldn't have been able to get back to Jeff City. That was over a 4-hour drive.
Okay, so that's the other thing. The infrastructure isn't in place to make it happen. I mean, I always think of our trips to when we were a family, we'd go to Colorado quite a bit, and I'm thinking, how many EVs have we got between here and Denver? Maybe not too many.
on the line.
Yeah,
Hey, good morning,
morning. Good morning, Senator. Thank you for joining us today.
You know, John, I think you're fantastic, but really Casey is the only one who could get me up to do an interview at this time of the day.
We'll take it. Hey, whatever it takes to get you in, Senator. How are you?
Hey, Senator, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about we saw the legislature attempt to pass some initiative petition reform last session. Both bodies talked about how it was a priority for them. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we did not get a bill over the finish line. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that is impacting some things we're seeing in Missouri right now, some out-of-state interests trying to get some initiative petitions on the ballot, and how that is impacting the kind of the work you're doing on that front?
Yeah, so we're seeing, kind of not anything that's surprising for Missouri. If you look at the national landscape, outside interest groups initially kind of had their first big win about playing as a national strategy with the prosecutors. And we saw what those Kim Gardner results look like in St. Louis. So there was some early wins with kind of that really, truly George Soros playing and statewide specific types of elections to get a very specific result that he was wanting across the country. We've seen rising crime because of that, and there has been a concerted effort now to use the initiative petition process to move forward some really liberal policies across the country. I would say chief among those has been ranked choice voting. So ranked choice voting has it's really actually pretty insidious, because what happens then is instead of one person, one vote, you're getting a result that nobody would have picked. And so enshrining that in constitutions across the country, the other big thing that people are focusing on is trying to erode Second Amendment rights via state constitutional changes. And then probably the thing that I'm saying last, but takes all the air in the room when people are talking about initiative petition reform, is the abortion issue. So for over 50 years, conservatives have been saying that Roe v. Wade was a disaster and that we needed to be making sure that people had a right to say what they thought was appropriate. And since then, these interest groups have used the initiative petition processes where they exist in states really to lie to voters. So you see in Michigan, they were told that this was going to roll back what was billed as their extreme pro-life laws, and that it would be, kind of common sense where there's a big consensus about maybe a 14 to 16 week ban, the traditional exceptions for rape and life of the mother. And instead, what you have seen happen is an incredible erasure of all health and safety results in Michigan. There's they've brought back partial birth abortion. They've gotten rid of all clinical and health safety requirements. There's no reporting requirements, no requirement that a doctor be involved in these incredibly barbaric procedures. And so you really are seeing these liberal interest groups from outside states take a national strategy of trying to undo the laws that each individual state is going to say is, they feel really comfortable with spending millions and millions of dollars. If you look at, again, going back to the abortion issue in Iowa, these radical positions were backed almost 2 to $1 per dollar outside of the pro-life movement. So I think there's a lot of people who are ready to see Missouri look at our initiative petition process and make sure that we're going to be, not taking away the rights of the people to change the way the Constitution is, but to make sure that there's a threshold that's appropriate. So I've heard a variety of different proposals. A really interesting one out of Senator Schroer's office that traces where the money is coming from to determine what percentage of the vote is required. And if it's Missourians funding an idea, then it's going to be a lower threshold than if it's out-of-state dollars. It becomes a higher threshold. I think that's an interesting proposition to give more of a say to Missourians. You've heard ideas from just changing the percentage that's required to my favorite, which is matching the requirement for those who are collecting signatures. So you have to have a majority of the congressional districts represented in your signature collection by certain percentages, matching that as well for passage. So, yeah, lots of discussions going to be happening about the initiative petition process this session.
Hey, Senator, it's Brad. One of the things
Hey,
I think.
Brad, I feel bad I didn't say hi earlier. Just sorry about that.
That's all right. I've been asleep most of the morning, so it's yeah. I'm like you. You know, after I stopped getting up with swim team and jumping in a cold thing of water every morning, I haven't been a big fan of morning. John knows this. One of the things that we worry about, especially in the small business community, when we look at these initiative petitions, that really scares us to death is outside interest imposing their economic will on us. Mm-hmm. And I think you know what I'm talking about with whether it be wages or, well, especially minimum wage, or, you know, we're looking at paid leave or some of those issues. Small business right now can't afford any more body blows. I mean, we're not very optimistic about what's going on out there. And, you know, when you've got the inflation issues we've had to deal with, the labor issues we've had to deal with, we're very concerned about initiative petition things popping up. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think that this is one of those things where you're seeing, in many ways, the Republican Party and just kind of, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to be really blunt because it's so early in the morning, we're really failing our traditional constituencies. And part of that is because big business continues to move further and further away from the types of values that you and I have hold. And so when we're talking about how do we make sure we have strong business interests in the state, I'm not talking about the big corporations. Those guys have continually gone woke. They're introducing, whether it's insisting that every business provides what they are not even willing to provide with their larger profit margins, but they're also, you know, they're pushing woke agendas that Missourians don't support. And that minimum wage discussion becomes especially problematic when you're looking at the different regions in the state. And, you know, if you're a Kirkwood small business, you're already paying minimum wage because you can't get an employee to show up if you're not. But if you're in, Hannah Kelly's district and you're down in Wright County, well, I'm sorry, it's absurd to suggest that you need to be paying $15 an hour when the cost of living is substantively cheaper. And what's going to happen is all the small businesses, or Jason Bean, for example, they just cross the state line. Those businesses have to relocate out of the state. They don't have an option. And so, again, it is really problematic when we are putting these types of things directly to the voter, not because voters aren't smart, but because it's the heart of what is a representative government. And if you're going to be pushing policy based on what is the most immediate direct result for an individual, voters aren't stupid. They're going to vote in their own interests, but often their own interest in the long run is not what's going to be in the state's best interest or in their immediate best interest. And so trying to get a little bit more thought there is really helpful.
But
the problem is this is a matter of Econ 101, right? I mean,
well, I keep thinking bread and circuses in Rome, right? And you can't, I don't want to say that out loud, but if you're starting to just give things away, printing money, this is, Western civilization decline 101 too, right? Like, this is what happens in end stage republics is if you're voting only for your immediate best interests.
Well, and you've mentioned George Soros, and a lot of times that name is used as a boogeyman in modern day politics, but that is real here. We are seeing California money impact Missouri policies, and we just don't elect the same type of government in these two states. We don't have the same type of needs. And I think,
and thank God. I mean, you saw what happened with the Florida governor debating the California governor, and I don't have a beef with either of the men, but the policies that have led to feces maps across San Francisco, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, these policies are broken. And it's not that we're heartless as conservatives, that we don't want people to make more money. It's that we don't want their jobs to completely go away, Brad, right? It's not that you're heartless, that as a small business you don't want to pay for paid leave. It's that there are no jobs for anyone if I'm required to do that because my margin is already too low.
Mary Elizabeth, we have 43% of our NFIB members out there have jobs they can't fill. 43%, and it's been up in the last 2 or 3 years. It's been up to 51. So I mean, the whole labor issue. As Walter Johnson up at MU used to say, you push on the balloon, it's got to come out somewhere else. And so you get these wages up, and then you wonder why we're still at 6-7% inflation. Well, something's going to happen there. So, and getting people to work and getting the right people to work has gotten to be such a problem for small business owners.
I mean, I was at I'm not proud to admit this, but I was in a McDonald's drive-thru in St. Louis City a few weeks ago, and they have a sign that wages starting at $14.50 an hour, I think.
Wait, what's embarrassing, Casey, that you were at McDonald's or you were in St. Louis?
I'm going to let everyone else determine which of those is worse. Our 710 guest will certainly chastise me for being in St. Louis rather at McDonald's. But
who's coming on at 710?
Scott Faughn.
Yes, he will.
Yes. So I pull up to the drive-thru, and they said, we can take drink orders, but we can't make any food for the next 20 minutes. We're getting ready to switch over from breakfast to lunch, and we don't have anyone to do the cooking for now. And I was like, flabbergasted. What? I mean, I'm pretty sure my first 3 years of campaign work combined, I wasn't making that much an hour with a college degree. So that just goes to show the shortage we've got here.
Well, if you don't like kiosks, let me tell you, folks, they're here to stay.
I have to tell you, in all honesty, though, it's not just the initiative petition process that's pushing these kinds of agendas. You guys need to hear that I'm fighting back about those kinds of ideas in the legislature. There's a proposal that came out last year by really well-meaning colleagues. They're wanting a tax cut for childcare for profit industries only. Well, I'm sorry, because they can't get enough workers. And I understand the knee-jerk reaction to say we're going to try to increase supply. But anytime there's a fiscal policy that benefits only one industry, we never get the result that we want. This is not the kind of solution that actually helps. It hurts in the long term. And so, these kinds of it's just not an easily solvable problem. And
Senator, we're running out of time this morning, but we certainly appreciate you being on with us. Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
The Eagle 950 KWS. I'm John Marsh. Casey Burns in with us this morning, as is NFIB Missouri's Brad Jones. We were just talking with Senator Coleman on the air and pointing out that Friday, this past Friday, was the first day of bill filing for the 2024 legislative session. Casey, we're hearing from our connections that it was a busy place on Friday over there.
Yeah, Jeff City was bustling on Friday with folks in and out of town getting their bills pre-filed, which, look, that's always great for downtown area businesses. I'm happy to see that. But it will be interesting to see how many of those pre-filed bills actually make it across the finish line this session. As we've talked about a little earlier in the show, I'm not sure many folks are optimistic that the legislature will get too much more done than their constitutional duty to pass the budget this year.
870 something.
870.
Yep, with Senate joint resolutions and House resolutions and House joint resolutions and all
Cashew chicken,
man, it's important. Yeah, so it's a bunch, and so what your listeners might wonder is, what does it look like when you pre-file a bill and what the way it comes out? It's just a one-liner, really. It kind of gives the subject matter of what the bill is, but I mean that one line could lead to a 80-page bill, but it says related to taxation. They can expand upon that. It could be any form of taxation. It could be sales tax. My takeaway from the 870 is there was a lot of them about firearms, Second Amendment stuff. There was, of course, the usual number of abortion bills that were out there. There was a few dealing with health, child care and health care. And what was kind of the other? Well, of course, there's a lot of tax bills.
That was my question.
Tax bills will always be, but in particular, as far as tax bills, property tax bills, there were several that were in the hopper on property tax. So,
Any proposals to take away my student loan debt, Brad?
No, I think we're doubling yours.
Crap.
I think you should pay for the philosophy majors out there, Hannah. So I don't know. I didn't hear anything about specifically your student loans. We can always add an amendment, though.
Yeah,
Hannah, if you're looking for more, you can have mine also.
I think I'm good, but I appreciate the offer.
Well, it's funny you talk about all the bills, and Brad brought up the angle of the potential for an income tax bill, and everybody we've talked to, a lot of politicians, at least the ones who wear their heart on their sleeve, even the governor said, I don't think that's going to happen this session.
No, I don't think it will either. But the property tax one, we'll see.
That's one Senator Eigel has his eye on as well. Senator Bill Eigel joins us.
And I like that Cotton Bowl. That's a throwback to the old days, right?
Yeah, 10 years ago or so was the last time Mizzou made a bowl appearance down in Dallas and all, and I was kind of surprised.
Well, I heard Peach Bowl and I heard different ones, but the Cotton Bowl, that kind of takes us back to those Big 12 days of back in the day, and I think it's going to be a fun bowl game. Ohio State's a good national program. Just got punched in the face, so maybe they're down and disappointed, and we'll catch them right, and we'll give them a good licking.
At least we don't have Texas down there. I mean, that would have been. I was like, that's going to be a home game. Please don't put Texas in Dallas. That's going to no. So Ohio State, that's big. That's tall cotton for us, man. I'm really proud of the way we've played this year. It's been fun.
Scott, I think
Go ahead. Sorry.
I think what people are more concerned about listening to this in regards to the bowl game is, are you taking me to Dallas in December to escape the Missouri weather? Have you booked those tickets yet? That's the more important question this morning.
Well, I haven't booked those tickets yet. I have a long list of other things you've got me doing. But when I get those done, yes, I'll be taking you to Dallas. But
when you finish your chores this morning, put that next on the list, would you?
Yes, ma'am.
Scott, talk to us. We saw 800 and some bills pre-filed on Friday here and all. Ambitious, whatever. We've talked to you so much over the past few years about election year politics and all. Can they get 870 of them across the finish line?
Well, a lot of them are meant to hopefully get John Marsh to talk about them, right?
Yeah.
That's the point they were filed. Some of them aren't. Most people, you have serious folks. Then you have your House members that want attention. You have your senators who are running for higher office. You got to take House member bills. There's your Dan Houses that are serious people. Then there's your other people that are just kind of creations of like a Facebook account that's come to life. They file things just to get attention, and none of them are relevant to anybody except trying to get likes on Facebook. The modern Republican Party is the greatest collection of whiners I've ever really seen in modern life. So they probably have a very good list of why you should be mad and why it should never be your own fault. Some of this stuff will get done, though. I think there's several things that have a good chance to get done. I don't prescribe to the doom and gloom totally of the election year politics. I think sometimes election year, especially the last year of a governor's administration, gives you a chance to do some things you might not have been able to do otherwise. If you look around, there's a big regulatory issue. The Public Service Commission, I think Cindy O'Loughlin has put her sights on them after you're going to see at some point, they'll get around to mid-Missouri, but Kansas City is seeing their electric bill skyrocket because of some program meant to quote-unquote help consumers. I think you're going to see that PSC either reform or you're going to see some major changes next year. So I think this year they'll get in and want to do some moderate changes to some things. Basically, they'll take a pinprick to save themselves from the axe.
Missouri Times, Scott Faughn with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
John, thank you. And Scott, we appreciate you joining us live. Officially in the House website, they're saying 343 bills were pre-filed on Friday. But again, not all of those have been calculated. There are more that are probably still in the hopper that just have to be calculated, if you will. But regardless, obviously a big amount. I'm intrigued by this bill, Scott. House Bill 1445, sponsored by Representative Jamie Johnson, who's a Democrat from up in Platte County in the Kansas City area.
I'm already pessimistic about its chances of passing.
Yeah, well, I'm intrigued by it because her bill, Scott, would create a new state holiday for Election Day. And second part of the bill, it would require colleges and universities to close unless used as a polling place. Does that have any chance?
No, God, no. I mean, George Washington found time in his day to go vote. I tend to think little freshman Georgie at Mizzou could find time to go vote. I get it. If you're a Democrat, you want the more people. Generally, the more people that vote, the better it is for Democrats. Fewer people that vote, they're old white guys like myself, the better for Republicans. So, but no, I don't think there's any chance of passing. I think personally, that's just silly. Figure it out, right? Folks have been figuring out a way to vote for a long time. I really like, especially in the cities. I don't spend a lot of my day worrying about the cities, but Casey spends a lot of time in the city. She can tell you. The fact is, in the city, I don't want to say it's disenfranchising. I used to roll my eyes when people say that. But the lines to vote in the cities does make it prohibitive for working people to vote. I'll be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
If you vote in downtown Jeff City, you might lose your whole lunch hour for it, right? Or you might get home later. You might miss happy hour to vote. The fact of the matter is, in the cities, those lines are so long, it does mean working people can't vote. It does hurt Republican turnout. And let's be honest, when we talk about election law, the only thing either party cares about is what advantages their voters. But the fact is, you go in St. Louis, especially, in St. Louis County, too, those lines are so long, a working person cannot get out and vote. And I think the legislature owes the public to do something about that. That hurts Republicans, too.
Hey, Scott, speaking of the cities, which we know you all have great disdain for the city of St. Louis, which is near and dear to my heart.
Except for the Cardinals.
Except for the Cardinals, that's right. We've seen, last session, we saw an attempt for the state to take control of the St. Louis City Police Department. It looks like 3 state reps so far have pre-filed that legislation for this year also. Now, there's no question that St. Louis has a crime issue. Do you see that bill making any progress or getting across the finish line?
Has anybody checked on Karla May this morning? Is she still healthy enough to stand up? Because the very talented senator from the city of St. Louis, if Karla May can still stand, then no, I don't. It's one of those things. We want the government we vote for, right, out here in central Missouri. Well, the city folks, they want the government they vote for, and they vote for a bunch of lawless hellscape. It is just the facts. If Kim Gardner could run again, if she did run again, I bet she'd win. Now, we all may think that's crazy, but...
Maybe if their lines weren't so long to get in the polling place to vote, there might be a little bit more of a moderate government in St. Louis City.
I think if you drive by the lines in that city, I'm not sure. You got a lot of pink-haired, weirdo-looking people that smell like pot. I think it'd be worse on them. But, I think Karla May will – you're going to have to go through her to get that done. The Senate is not going to PQ Karla May, in my estimation, and I just go back to, at the end of the day, do you not deserve the government you vote for? And the people in the city vote for very woke, I would say almost insane policies with no help of working that have turned it into it's just a murder factory half the time. I don't get it. I don't know why anybody want to live there, but people do. And when they do, they generally vote for these things. And so it's a conundrum to me. How long do you keep people from is it not better off to let them have Kim Gardner and let it just be lawless chaos, and then maybe they'll come to their senses? Or do you try to force them? Regardless, the practical politics of it, in my opinion, it's a fine public policy discussion. I'll bet you of those 3, one of those people is actually a serious lawmaker who's trying to do something real. The other 2 probably just wanting attention. But I just until you can sit down with that St. Louis delegation and convince them this is the right way forward, I don't know how you force the government down those roads. I mean, if the state tried to take over the Jeff City police, we'd get the guns out on the bridge, and it'd be a showdown. The city of St. Louis, some of those people feel the same way.
Scott, where do you come down on the potential for an official piece of legislation for the official dish of the state of Missouri, Springfield-style cashew chicken?
Well, Gussie has taken to liking Pokemon, which is sort of freaks me out a little bit. And I wonder if Greg Razor wasn't a Pokemon fan or something, and this isn't some secret plot by the Asiatic people to take over America. I don't really like cashew chicken. I do like Asian food. Shout out to the Fuji Hibachi Grill in Jefferson City. But I think it's a cute thing. I think is it cashew chicken invented in Springfield?
It was.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is Truman. People don't know this. Greg Razor was Truman the Tiger when he was in school.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is Greg trying to be geographically bipartisan and do a little something for our friends down in Springfield.
And I think this might be the most polarizing thing he could have done, ironically.
I don't like cashew chicken, but I don't really understand what the pushback is. Like, I don't think it should be the state dish. The state dish should be like a ribeye or pork steak or something.
Yeah.
But I don't really understand the cashew chicken controversy.
Toasted ravioli, man.
I would say the controversy has just begun. I think.
Oh yeah.
This morning, I believe that everybody in their areas of the state that love what they love, like I said, I'll take a Bush burger. It's been there in Columbia a long, long time. Same griddle. I mean, who says you can't run a business with little wax paper?
Little Gates and Sons out of Kansas City.
Gates
Float
and
that bill
Sons,
across.
yeah.
That's speaking my language a lot more than cashew chicken, for sure.
Look, I went to Missouri State in Springfield. There's fantastic Chinese food in Springfield. I got to tell you, though, cashew chicken it doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that stuff. Although, I mean, you get me down to that steak and shrimp at Fuji Hibachi there in Jeff City, I'm all in.
There you go. Missouri Times Scott Faughn on with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Scott, always good to talk to you.
They're going to get to talk a little bit more tomorrow, guys. We're going to have a good time tomorrow. We have a guy that played in the Cotton Bowl last time Missouri was in it. Curtis Gregory going to join us. Andrew Bailey, the Attorney General, just got endorsed by Eric Schmitz. It'll be a big deal. His campaign. Moon Choi is going to join us, talk a little football, a little Mizzou. Crystal Quay, the Democratic nominee for governor, and the former television voice of the Cardinals, Dan McLaughlin, is going to join us tomorrow.
Pretty cool. We'll see you tomorrow morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
But coming up next, What's Hot with Hannah?
Got a local story. Had some drama with the Class 6 high school football finals over the weekend.
Yeah, what's up with that? When we come back on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. John Marsh, 7:25-ish, and it means what's up with Hannah?
It's actually right on time, 7:25. Millie Faughn would be very proud.
Yeah, with her dad on
Yes.
that close a proximity, I knew we better be on the money or deal with it later.
Yeah, Casey, normally when we have our chats with Scott Faughn at 7:10 on Monday mornings, it runs a little long. Let's just put it that way.
Shock.
Right? And so What's Hot with Hannah ends up being a little late, and Millie gets a little cranky with her father over that. And I appreciate it because for years it was never on time. And Millie started advocating for me, and there was some change that happened around here, and I appreciate that.
Well, it sounds like you'll have both Scott and Millie in studio tomorrow, hopefully. So we'll see who wins out on the timeliness there.
Well, there we go.
The only one better at bossing Scott around than me is probably Millie.
Hey, that's my girl. Over the weekend, there was some high school football action that was wrapping up for the season. The championship playoff games took place in Columbia at Faurot Field over the weekend. And John, did you see that there was a little bit of drama over the Class 6 title game?
A little bit more than a little bit, right?
Yeah, so the game was against a school called Christian Brothers Cadets, CBC, and Liberty North. And Liberty was kicking a little bit of tail. It was 38-7 in the fourth quarter. And there was a series of, let's just say, unfortunate events. And there were lots of aggressive plays being called. There was 4 technical fouls that were handed out in the fourth quarter. And CBC's coach, with 3 minutes and 15 seconds left on the clock, ended up saying, I think we should just quit. Let's end the game because someone is going to get really hurt. And, we're down 38-7. It's just not worth it. And the officials all got together and agreed with the coach. So the game ended 3 minutes early because there was a brawl about to happen is what it sounds like.
Sound like the Missouri Senate. Like the last day of session, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit, actually, now that you say that.
Oh, wow.
But no, I had never seen anything like that, especially in a high school game. There's always big fights when we look at things like professional sports, sometimes in college. But yeah, a brawl happening at Faurot Field between a couple high school teams was not on my bingo card for the weekend.
Are you saying they weren't being Christianly brotherly?
No comment.
For your CBC alums.
For your CBC alums.
I remember back in the day, Brad can probably relate to the day, was when the Jefferson City Jays played KC Paseo, and it was like we were shuttled back to the bus in no uncertain terms.
Absolutely.
Off the field, run to the buses.
Yeah, absolutely. Those were some mean games. And I'll be honest with you, there were some Jay Hickman games that
yes.
Not only on the field but in the stands it got a little heated. So
well, and something cool that also happened over the weekend at Faurot Field, they always recognize the 20th anniversary of the state championship winners, and this year was the 20th anniversary for my hometown, the Centralia Panthers. They won the Class 3 title back in 2003. So they got to be recognized. So it was fun to see all those pictures on Facebook of all my Facebook friends getting to hang out on Faurot Field as they were getting recognized.
That is pretty cool.
that is nice.
Hey,
Yeah,
speaking
that's
of
nice.
state championships, I would be remiss today if I didn't give a shout out to the Central Rebels football team. Boo. I grew up down in the Lead Belt. I went to North County, not Central, but I have a lot of friends who've got nieces and nephews playing for the team. I know it was quite an upset when they beat Blair Oaks a few weeks ago. But they just won the state championship in football for the first time in school history.
Very cool.
Nice.
Senator AWS, I'm John Marsh. Casey Burns and Brad Jones along with us, Hannah, producer, and Brian Hauswirth. And the senator is on the line.
All right. We've got Senator Bill Eigel joining us this morning, candidate for Missouri's next governor, and maybe one of the least popular guys with the Jeff City establishment. Senator, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me. Did you almost say most hated? You almost said most hated guys in Jefferson City. I wear that like a badge, you know.
I decided I'd tone it down a little for our early morning audience here. I don't want to get kicked off the radio station my first appearance. So,
well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Senator, we have talked a lot about pre-filing this morning. I know you've got some legislation that you pre-filed, but there's one specific area I'd like to talk about as we're into December now, and I just got my personal property tax bill in the mail. I know you've got a lot of feelings about personal property taxes, and frankly, I probably tend to agree with you on this subject because I get a little tired of paying rent on my car every year. So why don't you tell me about your property tax proposals and how you think they'll work and impact the state of Missouri?
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the proposal. We're going to get rid of personal property tax. We're going to eliminate personal property tax, and we're going to stop charging people rent for the crime of owning a car. And in the state of Missouri, Missouri is actually just in the minority of states. Only 21 states actually still have personal property tax on vehicles and equipment. So if we want to start growing like the other big red states, Tennessee, Florida, Texas, then we've got to get rid of these dumb ideas that we pursue in Missouri. And one of them is charging our citizens rent for the crime of owning a car. I mean, Brad, I know you have been very engaged on small business issues. There are a few things that we could do to really unleash small business owners in this state than getting rid of the personal property tax they got to pay every December 1st. When I was running a small business, I know that I had to spend thousands of dollars for my work van in my small business. So let's get away from this bad tax. Let's get away from personal property tax. And I've already filed legislation, a constitutional amendment that will get rid of personal property tax. And the way it gets rid of personal property tax is get this. We're going to require some spending cuts in Jefferson City to backfill the local areas that will be losing those funds in the first place. We're not just going to create another tax to pay for it somewhere else. We're going to use all that money that's been going down to Jefferson City for something that the people actually want. And in this case, it's getting rid of personal property tax. When I'm the governor of this state, the people of this state will have paid their last personal property tax bill on December 1st.
Senator, we've heard the argument made, ever since you guys brought this up, even before that when this was an issue. And the thing they cycle back to is say, well, what about education that gets a small amount from personal property taxes that's hold harmless? What about funding fire districts and libraries and all? And your response to that?
So the value of every personal property tax bill on every citizen in every small business and every big business everywhere in Missouri is approximately $1.7 billion. Well, the budget in Jefferson City has grown by $27 billion just in the past 7 years. Our general revenues, the growth in our general revenues last year was $2 billion. So we have the point I always try to make is all the problems facing the state, none of them have to do with a lack of taxpayer money going to Jefferson City or to any local area. We have plenty of money. So we could get rid of every one of those tax bills. If we just got, from a Jefferson City perspective, if we just got rid of the $10 billion in new decision items that we added to the budget last year, we would have more than enough money for Jefferson City to reimburse the local areas after we got rid of personal property tax. But we don't do that. And that's what's frustrating about Missouri government and politicians in general. You got all these Republicans that keep talking about reducing the tax burden, but when we actually have an opportunity to do so and a very clear path to do so, i.e. there's plenty of money sitting around, we don't do it. And that's why people get frustrated with the political discussion.
Senator, I've got another question for you on a different subject. Last week, we saw Representative Chris Dinkins from Lesterville send a letter to Governor Parson urging him to not allow Missouri to take in any potential Palestinian refugees that could have Hamas ties until they had been vetted. The governor responded, and you have been a little vocal about his response. Give us your counter argument there as to why you kind of agree with the representative and your how you would go about dealing with this if you were the governor.
So Representative Dinkins basically came out and said that the governor should be aggressive in leaning forward and saying that he wasn't going to accept refugees being resettled in the state of Missouri under the new DHS program, which basically circumvents federal immigration law. In fact, our attorney general is joining the attorneys general of 19 other states suing the federal government because the attorney general understands that this move by DHS is illegal. Well, this was a great opportunity for Mike Parson to just come out and say, yeah, you're darn right. We're not going to let illegal immigrants into the state. I'm going to do anything that's available to me under Missouri Constitution, Missouri law to prevent illegal immigrants from coming into the state. We consider that low-hanging fruit in the political world, but not to miss an opportunity to give the wrong answer. Mike Parson instead says, yeah, you know what? And I'm paraphrasing. There's nothing the governor could do. I think Representative Dinkins hasn't been in office long enough to really understand this issue. There's nothing I can do. My hands are tied. But we're going to have to stand back and effectively do nothing. That is precisely the answer that Missourians don't want to see. We have about 51,000 illegal immigrants in the state of Missouri, and the estimates of what that costs our communities is about $1,000 per household, or statewide, those 51,000 illegal immigrants are costing us $2.3 billion every single year, the Missouri taxpayer. Remember what I just said, that the value of every personal property tax bill is about $1.7 billion. Keep that in mind. So there is a very real cost, not to mention the crime that's being driven by having an entirely new caste system set up in our society, by having some people with much less rights who have gotten here illegally that are coming into this state. There's a moral dilemma as well as the fiscal cost. So I got to tell you, when I'm the governor of this state, I'm going to declare this illegal immigration crisis for exactly what it is. Under Article 4 of the Constitution, it is an invasion, which will activate the resources of the government, whether it's law enforcement or the National Guard, to make sure that if we have illegal immigrants coming into this state, then we're going to be aggressive about making sure that they're not staying in our borders. So I don't know why Governor Parson wants to take a very soft, vague approach to this, but that's the route he's chosen, and I think it's going to make a lot of folks around the state even more frustrated with the lack of leadership on his part.
Senator Bill Eigel on the air with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, 874-9390, phone calls or texts. Senator, talk to us about the upcoming session. Bill filing just started on Friday. Are you optimistic, pessimistic? And election years as well as anybody, is much, if anything, going to get accomplished at the State House?
Yeah, I tend to go into these new sessions with a lot of optimism. There's a lot of folks that are already talking about how we're going to get a lot of things done. I think that one of the first things that we're going to get done is initiative petition reform. I think that you're going to see the Senate act quickly. I know that's typically not the Senate's style to act quickly, but I think you're going to see the Senate act quickly on initiative petition reform to get something over to the House that will likely be a concurrent majority addition to the Constitution. And then if we could get maybe if we could just get one of those big items out of the way early, that provides a path to get several big items, even though it's an election year. I actually tend to look at it as, if it's an election year, what a better time for Republicans in Jefferson City to showcase all the things that they can do and all the measures that they have passed on behalf of the people who have sent them there with these supermajorities in the first place. So I like to be optimistic, and until my colleagues give me a reason to not be optimistic, that's what we're going to do.
Senator Eigel, if you had to hedge your bets on one piece of legislation making it across the finish line this session, both bodies, the House and the Senate, what would that be?
Hedge my bets as in what bill do I think will or won't make it over the finish line?
You pick either one. I'm happy to hear either option.
The one that I think will make it over the finish line is going to be initiative petition reform. I'm very optimistic on that one. I think that there was a lot of heat taken by our leadership team and others in the Senate Republican caucus for not getting that done early on in session. And so I suspect that gets done relatively quickly and smoothly, in spite of all the chatter that's surrounding that particular issue. Things that won't get done, here's what I don't think is going to get done. Major budget reform. We talk every year about the need to get spending under control. We're spending twice per person. To put in perspective how out of control our spending is in the state of Missouri, we spend twice per person in this state what the state of Florida does. And that's amazing given the fact that I'm pretty sure Florida has a far more elderly population that has needs that Missouri doesn't have on its population. So I don't think I'm not optimistic necessarily that we're going to get major budget reforms that we absolutely need so that we can afford the personal property tax cuts or the income tax cuts and really make good on the claims and promises of fiscal conservatism that we go through every election cycle.
Senator Bill Eigel in with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, 93.9 The Eagle, 950 KWS. Senator, where do you come down on the side of things that plays pretty good in outstate Missouri but does not play well here in this company town, and that's limiting or cutting the size of state government?
Well, so Brian, I think you know where I stand on this. We have an enormous state government for the size of state we have. Again, I'll put it in perspective a different way. The state of Indiana that has roughly the same population we have has half as many people in their state government as we have in ours. And that means that there's a really good opportunity for us to find ways. In fact, it doesn't have to come at the cost of people losing their jobs, even, believe it or not, when we reduce state government. Of the 55,000 state positions that we have right now, at any given time, 5,000 to 7,000 of those positions are empty. And we're appropriating dollars to those positions anyway. Think about that. We're sending money to these departments, and then they're being spent by the departments for positions that aren't even filled. And I get frustrated that no one in the legislature actually takes the time to find out, well, do we need these positions and where is that money going? It's very frustrating for me. And I think that if we could get rid of just the waste that we have in our government, we could save tens of billions of dollars. Remember, in 2017, our state budget was $27 billion. It's $51 billion today. Does anybody around here feel like they're getting twice from their government today as they were just a couple of years ago? If that person exists, they haven't been reaching out to me. I think we could do a lot better. And when we do, we're going to be passing all those reforms that other big red states are doing, and Missouri is not. That's what we're missing out on. We're missing an opportunity to be a leader in these United States. We've got to implement these big policies. I've always talked about a Missouri where if we can do these big red things, the Ron DeSantis's or the Greg Abbotts of the world are going to wake up one morning, turn their TVs on, and say to themselves, man, look at all the great things that Missouri is doing. How do we become more like the show me state? That's the Missouri I'm talking about there. That's why I'm going around the state with a very simple saying. Let's go, Missouri. We're missing out.
All right. Senator Bill Eigel, candidate for Missouri governor. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks, guys. Have a great morning.
Straight ahead, that would be all except for this. Ever been in South Florida this time of the year? You may see something else dropping once the seasons change. Up here in the Great White North, trees shed their leaves. That means fall is here and winter's near. However, in Florida, as my co-host will attest, iguanas falling from trees means it's time to bust out the jackets because when it gets cold enough, the iguanas become immobilized, frozen basically, and they hang out in trees. So, Mr. Jones,
They fall out.
Down they come.
They just kind of go into a little coma and they just fall out of the trees.
But they will tell you, the conservation guys in Florida say they may look dead. It's best to leave them be and don't bring them into the house because once the temperature heats back up, the iguanas revive and will start to walk around. They are not protected in Florida. There is no season you can humanely kill the iguanas on your property. They also said if you've killed an iguana and don't plan on eating it, it's best to check your city's rules for disposing of the iguana before it goes in the trash, as many Florida communities have fines for putting iguanas in the trash.
You know what their favorite food is?
What is it?
Cashew chicken.
Listen,
I was just
Boy, set us up on that one.
That was good, wasn't it? I've been waiting all morning for that one. Yeah. But the iguanas are... They're an intriguing species.
They get pretty big.
They get very big, and they're.
My wife used to have a pet one.
For the most part, well, we went down. You know, Dave Baker played Meeting of the Minds. We were in Key West, and we were in the backyard, and we named him Jason. Why he named him Jason, I have no idea. But they like to sit up on the fence, and so they'll sit up on the top of the fence, and they just kind of sit there, you know, and they eat bugs and they eat blossoms and stuff, but.
Casey,
they don't really
had
bother you.
You had any encounters with them?
Yeah, well, Brad and I were just talking about the iguanas in Key West and all over South Florida and how big they get. I was just thinking, man, I would hate to be walking down the street as the temperatures drop and one of those falls out of a tree and hits you on the head.
Yeah.
These are, I mean, we're talking small dog-sized iguanas.
That would be unnerving. It would. To have one drop on your head would probably cause, that freaked out a little bit. It would hurt, yeah. There's no umbrella iguana system that I know of that you can carry around down there and keep the iguanas out. But Key West has got there's a lot of trees. There's a lot of foliage and palm trees and stuff, and they do. Of course, it doesn't get, you're talking the northern part of Florida. You're not talking Key West. It never gets cold enough for the iguanas to fall out of anything.
No, you're talking there. Tallahassee and north and up that way, right?
Exactly.
It kind of reminds me, John, of the hamster story that I covered a couple weeks ago in What's Hot with Hannah.
Yeah, relate that real quick.
Basically, a TikTok podcast had gone viral because they were talking about hamsters, and a lot of people don't know that hamsters hibernate. And so they were kind of having all of these people horrified that they had maybe buried their hamsters alive growing up because they thought that their hamsters were dead when really they just got too cold and so they were sleeping really hard.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody cared that much if they did with an iguana, though, would they, Brett?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, if I was just walking down the street minding my own business and I got hit in the head with a lizard, I think I would probably go home and not leave my house for a while.
Well, International Wake up mid-Missouri, 93.9 The Eagle, 950 KWS. I'm John Marsh. Casey Burns in with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, John.
We're doing good. Our state representative, Rudy Veit from Cole County, in with us. And we were right on the money, weren't we? We know the guy to talk to about iguanas.
Well, let me tell you something. It's an honor to be here, but it's a real challenging following Scott Vaughn, who has a perfect job. He kind of, says what he wants, has a folksy attitude, plain spoken, and makes money at it. And so, what a career!
Wait, he makes money at that?
Well, he says he does. Yeah,
I'm missing out on something here.
He has nice digs.
Well, we were talking about iguanas falling on people's heads when they get cold in Florida, and Rudy said, "I've had dealings with iguanas in the Caribbean, right?
In the Bon Airs down by Aruba, for many years I went scuba diving there every year. Now that I'm in the legislature, it doesn't fit my schedule, but we had iguana soup there, and it's available all the time.
Would that be what they called an acquired taste, Rudy?
Oh, you can make soup out of anything. It's what you put in it.
Is that similar to turtle soup?
It was more of a stewish type thing. I had one bite or about part of a bowl, and that was about as far as it went.
Not something you were asking for the recipe for so you could bring home and recreate it, huh?
Well, then I'd have to get the conservation to stock them here first.
And then we don't want them falling on people's heads this time of year. So.
They look more appetizing than armadillos do.
Oh, boy, I'll take your word for it.
We have a long history with armadillos on Wake Up in Missouri State Rep.
Yeah, we do. Boy, Brian Hauswirth, the armadillo killer, which goes back a number of years, and Brian's famous story about hitting an armadillo that was so big it got lodged under his car.
And he claims it was loud enough to wake up everyone at the Capitol Plaza Hotel in Jefferson City.
Well, but that's good. That means the deer aren't so bad on the road.
That's right. The armadillos were worse. Well, State Representative, right around the corner, you guys are ready to go back to the State House. Bill filing opened on Friday. Your thought on the upcoming session and what's high on your agenda?
The challenge that I think most representatives have, and senators should have anyway, is called self-restraint. Because there will be so many great ideas and things that sound popular, unthought all the way through, lack of collateral consequences looked at, but it's a political thing and it's an election year. So who could be against it? I mean, who could be against a tax cut? I did note this morning coming in, I think the general revenue is down 2.5%, and that doesn't take effective inflation, so the buying power is substantially less. And tax, and we give a lot of tax cuts, and we have tax cuts already built into the system. I'd kind of like to see the collateral consequences, what we pass, before I get too excited about too many more tax cuts. If we have excess revenue, give it back. You never want the state to have more revenue coming in than they absolutely need, because we'll find a way to spend it. But at the same token, you don't just cut off the source until you see who's going to cover the benefits you're cutting.
Representative, we have talked a lot about pre-filing this morning, and something you that's familiar to you in the House is that Speaker Dean Plocker put a limit on how many bills each member can pre-file. Is that right? 20 bills or something? You can only file 20 bills per session without authorization from the Speaker for more. Do you think that limits the productivity of the House? Do you think it impacts it in a positive light? What's your opinion on limiting the amount of bills? We've got one of the biggest state houses in the country with 163 members. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, basically, there's only a couple of them who do that anyway, and if they have more than 20 bills, they can have someone else do it. But I hate to, try to limit the number of brilliant ideas that are coming forward. So, every bill is somebody's brilliant ideas. I hate to limit.
I'm sure you say that with no sarcasm whatsoever. We've asked a few folks this morning, what do you think has the best chance of getting over the finish line at the end of session? And what do you think is least likely to cross the finish line?
I think IP reform will get across. It should have been across 4 or 5 years ago before it became so controversial. So now that we have ignored it and couldn't agree on something, we will come up with something. But however, at this stage, I don't think that people are going to vote for it. We've seen it in other states, so we're going to spend a whole lot of time. I still want to do an IP reform. Let's do it and get it done with. Take our shot. But I don't think the public is ready for it right now under all the publicity.
State Representative Rudy Veit in with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
John, thank you. And Casey, you're doing a fine job co-hosting today, and appreciate you, Hannah, as well. Representative, thank you for your service. You made a very powerful point at the parade this weekend. You were on KMIZ and talked about how the parade has grown. So that was a nice story that we had. I want to get.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge turnout, just absolutely huge, and I appreciate your service. There is a bill that your colleague Dave Griffith has filed, and we don't know a lot about it, but pretty basic bill. It's HJR 74, so it'd go to the vote of the people. Essentially, it's this one sentence, Representative, a proposed constitutional amendment that would divide state revenues from gaming activities between public institutions of elementary, secondary, and higher education and the administration of the Missouri Veterans Commission. Basically a one-sentence bill. Have you had a chance to read that, and any thoughts on that, Representative?
Well, I have read it, and I certainly would never say anything negative about my partner's bills here in the county. He does a great job covering veterans issues, and that does give money to the veterans. However, I'm not a big fan of designated funds. You know, I thought when we got the riverboat gambling in, I thought that was going to solve all our educational needs. And really, I bet if we look at the actual money spent, it's just taking money from one source, give it to another. We give it to one source, and we just won't give it out of general revenue. I understand the need that the Veterans Commission needs a dedicated source, but I don't know. I haven't looked at all the collateral consequences. I'm just not a fan generally of dedicated sources. That's what we have general revenue for, and that's what we have legislatures, the flexibility to address the issues that need to be addressed.
Gotcha. I appreciate your time, Representative.
Rudy, what do you think about the stock question, I guess we ask you every time you're in, especially going into this session? The House was productive last year, got a lot of bills passed out, but unfortunately the other chamber over there, the vast majority of them didn't make it through. Do you think there's going to be anything to look forward to over there, or is it just more election year politics?
Well, we are Republicans and we're a majority, so I think we're above election year politics, but yes, it probably will stall a lot of things.
So we talked about getting IP reform over the finish line. I think you have some valid points there. The legislature can get it done. I don't know that it passes on the ballot, right? I think the messaging there is really difficult. What do you think? Which piece of legislation, whether it be, cashew chicken, whether it be an anti-hazing bill, what piece of legislation is least likely to make it across the finish line and onto the governor's desk this year?
Well, I hope they're not mine. But
Great answer.
I don't know. It's hard to predict. I've started looking through the bills, and a lot of them are just bills that have been around forever. And keep in mind, when I first came to the legislature, I had a discussion one night with Governor Parsons and about IP reform, how important it was we have it. And we should have done this a long time ago before it was such a controversial issue. Realistically, you shouldn't amend the Constitution by 50%. I mean, the Constitution is designed to protect the minority from the majority. If the same majority can change that a mere 50%, you're not offering a whole lot of protection to the minority.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, if you guys will entertain me, I'd like to switch gears and ask you about another subject really quick. I know you are a big, avid Blair Oaks sports fan, and I've become, the more time I spend in mid-Missouri, I've learned a lot more about Blair Oaks. I think they've got a great academic program, great football team. But I am from the Lead Belt, and I don't know what it is in the water down there, but Central Park Hills High School produced a phenomenal football team this year that, in an upset, beat Blair Oaks and took them out of running to go to the state championship. And just this weekend, Central, for the first time in school history, won state in football. So how's Blair Oaks recovering from that, and what's the expectation for next year?
One of the goals of Blair Oaks is to be good citizens and community and let other people have a chance. Now, if I had been the referees at the game in Columbia where Class 6 went into a 3-minute tantrum, I would have made them all sit on the field, just sit on the field for 3.5 minutes and do nothing. That kind of conduct is unprofessional. It's on everything.
Where was that state of mind of letting others have a chance when they played the California Pintos this year, Griff? Or Veit, sorry.
Well, you also have to keep people competitive. You just can't give away, not hold people to a little bit of a challenge.
There you go.
State Representative Rudy Veit from Cole County with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Rudy, your priorities for the upcoming session, things that are high on your list that you hope can move in the right direction.
Well, there were 4 of my bills in Senate Bill 72, which was killed on the last day after it came through conference, and I and that senator are trying to take the parts out of it and just put it in one bill. It's been passed through the House, the Senate, and conference, and try to get that through. One of the bills that's kind of challenging, it's going to be real challenging, is undoing some of the language we did in several bills last year. We had a redaction bill which requires so much information to be redacted in court filings, and so when it gets placed on the internet, personal information isn't given out. But you at least have to be if you're going to give a judgment awarding custody of a certain child, certain visitation, etc., the judgment has to have enough information to identify the person. And so I've gotten judges calling me, and I've got a meeting again tomorrow, trying to some way to fix that, because one, the lawyers are spending hours trying to make sure everything's redacted. There's a provision in the statute that if you don't redact something, you can be personally responsible. So lawyers are redacting everything. The judges are getting judgments prepared for them, which you can't read. It's all redacted out. And if it goes on CaseNet, it's still all redacted out, but you got to have a judgment's got to be able to be used too.
See, this is not the type of legislation that you're going to see promoted on Facebook, getting likes, getting signatures, it's not, the sexy piece of legislation that everyone wants to tout, but it impacts everyone's daily life. And so I appreciate you taking up serious pieces of legislation and working on things that actually impact day-to-day Missourians.
Well, another one is service of process. We have a fund called the Deputies Retirement Fund, or not Retirement Fund, Deputy Subsidy Fund, where certain counties, they can use part of the money to pay deputies additional money. Regardless of whether or not it's constitutional, I get real questions about that because we already found the Sheriff's Retirement Fund unconstitutional. But so now when you have a process server, he's got to go to the sheriff's office, give him a $10 check, get an affidavit. He's supposed to file it with the clerk that he's paid that additional money. Well, to file something with the clerk, you have to be an attorney for electronic filing, so they can't do that. So that's a problem. And so you're adding another $100, $200 on every service of process, which there's got to be an easier way.
When the vast majority of processes that are served probably wouldn't qualify for that much of a dollar amount attached to them just to go out and serve. A lot of them are routine, is what I'm getting at.
Right? Well, it's not the $10. No one's opposed to the $10. It's the ad at work. You're going to spend $100 to $200 on process servers now just to collect that $10. The process servers, I've talked to them. They've been in my office a bunch. They're not opposed to the $10. Now, philosophically, anytime you add court cost on, you're also putting more of a barrier to access to court. Access to our courts is a constitutional right, too.
State Representative Rudy Veit with us this morning. Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Any more boring subject?
I think so. Stephanie's in-house with us. Stock futures retreated after the S&P 500 closed at a new 2023 high following a 5-week winning streak, and futures on the Dow Jones shed 90 points, about 0.3%. S&P 500 slid 0.4%. NASDAQ futures lost 0.5%. That was interesting, though. The shares of Alaska Airlines dropped more than 12% in pre-market trading that afternoon as it agreed to acquire rival Hawaiian Airlines in a $2 billion deal. So those kind of things kind of peripheral to the rest of us. Not the vast majority of us are flying either Hawaiian or Alaskan Airlines. But I was kind of curious that the futures slipped when a big merger was announced.
That is interesting. And, I have friends who have flown Alaskan Airlines and say really complimentary things. I guess living in Missouri and, St. Louis no longer being a hub of any sort, I've never flown Alaskan Airlines coming or going anywhere, I don't think. Have you?
No.
No, me neither.
Even being born in Alaska, it's I'm not even sure Alaskan Airlines existed by that name at that time. But it's it's interesting to see how that has effects on things that you wouldn't perceive would be something, you would think a merger of them and a well-established Hawaiian Airlines might be a step in the right direction, at least, but in the perception of stockholders, but apparently not.
It sounds like not. And, we've seen a lot of volatility in the airline industry this year. So maybe that's a sign of I don't know, hopefully not bad things to come, but you never know what we're looking at going forward.
Well, I think that gets a lot of people's attention in mid-Missouri, too, when you talk about the success of the new terminal at Columbia Regional and, becoming quite the destination for a lot of folks. I know both Stephanie and Mark Ellinger say it's just too darn easy to fly out of Columbia as opposed to going to KCI or Lambert.
And Columbia having that direct flight to Dallas with the bowl game in Texas, I bet those ticket prices are about to skyrocket right now.
Yeah, stay tuned, see if you can even find a seat on one of those.
Yeah, no kidding.
You might want to talk to the big guys like Dr. Moon Choi or somebody and get on the Mizzou charter if you can swing it.
And I believe he's coming on tomorrow with
I think that's
guest
the
host
plan.
Scott Faughn.
So maybe we could ask him if he's got room on the bus for 106.9 The Eagle, 950 KWOS. I'm John Marsh. Casey Burns in with us this morning, and Will Wheeler joining us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Hey, Will, thanks for joining us this morning. Will is Chief of Staff to Senator Karla Eslinger in the state legislature and has a background working in Republican politics for Senator Roy Blunt and others throughout the years. Will, talk to us a little this morning about pre-filing, if you will.
Well, good to be on with you this morning. I've been able to listen to a lot of the conversation this morning, and you guys have covered a lot of it. One of the things I've heard left out of the discussion that I think is important to recognize is you have 800-something bills that have been pre-filed now that we've talked about. But the important part of pre-filing that kind of differs from the Senate and the House is in the Senate, when you refer the bills to committee, the President Pro Tem has to refer those bills in order. So pre-filing the bills, what order you pre-file the bills in, is always super important, whereas the House, the Speaker of the House has the leniency and the ability to refer bills to committee completely out of order whenever they want, and choose not to refer them at all. So it's important in the Senate to recognize what those first 100, 200 bills are, because that's really going to dominate the first half of session before we get into spring break.
So speaking of those first 100 or 200 bills, have you seen anything in your work in the Senate that has been pre-filed so far this year that you think will maybe be the first bill to get across the finish line in the Senate, or that will be the first to die in the Senate, either one?
Well, I don't know what's going to be the first to get across. I'll go to a specific area that I think will dominate a lot of the first half of session, which is I think will be the topic of public utilities. I think it's always important to note what your leadership files. So in the Senate, the President Pro Tem, the Majority Floor Leader, the House, the Speaker of the House, and their respective Majority Floor Leader. And in the Senate, you have your Majority Floor Leader and Senator Cindy O'Loughlin only filed 5 bills, and 4 of them are dealing with public utilities. I think that's a good signal that something is going to get done with public utilities this year. And not only that, you go to the chairman of the Commerce Committee that handles these utility issues, Senator Mike Searpoy, and his first 7 bills that he filed are all dealing with some aspect of public utilities. So I would expect something on public utilities to probably move pretty quickly through the Senate and make its way on over to the House, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Will Wheeler's joining us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
You know, Will, you mentioned the public utilities, and obviously that's getting a lot of attention in the Senate. It's not necessarily sexy for some of the news media, but those are extremely, extremely important bills, and they affect everyone's lives. Why don't they get the publicity some of the other bills do? The cashew chicken thing that's been all over the news statewide all weekend. No offense to the representative that sponsored it. It's definitely newsworthy. But these other bills, they just don't get that much attention.
I couldn't tell you why. I don't know why. I think because utilities specifically are so complex. I mean, you had to start looking at, are you talking about utilities that are administered by your local public municipality? So what California does, what the city of West Plains does, that are all city owned, or do you look at Liberty and Ameren, or do you look at what the co-ops are doing with public utilities? I mean, you start there, and then you start getting into specific rate hikes, energy sources, renewables, solar, nuclear, and I think because it gets so complex, and frankly, it's my generation that's part of the problem, where our attention span is so short that if you can't explain something in a 60-second TikTok video, well, then I'll find something else to talk about that'll make sure will catch your eyes and keep you scrolling or reading the headline.
And if I may just follow up very quickly, you bring up a very good point about, the younger generation stuff and TikTok, but by the same token, it is hard. I'm talking about myself as someone who's been around that building for a long, long time. It is hard. I'm just going to take one of Searpoy's bills. his bill that is Senate Bill 739 that relates to solid waste disposal area permits. That's huge, especially with the that landfill they're talking about up in Kansas City. That's really, that's one of a rare bipartisan issue. But to try to explain that bill in a 30-second newscast, if you maybe have 20 seconds to do it, to really tell the story, Will, and explain it in 20 seconds, I don't think it's to do it fairly, and it's not even all that controversial, but to do it accurately, I'm not sure it can be done.
I think you're exactly right with that. And that's another huge issue that I'm sure is going to take up a lot of time of the Senate this year, with both Senator Mike Searpoy and Senator Bratton both filing that as their number one priority bill. Like you said, it also has bipartisan support. Yes. It kind of slowed down the Senate last year and caused us to have a stalemate right before we needed to pass the budget. But with that being their number one priority from two senators of the same party that are maybe from a little bit different wings of the Republican Party, and the bipartisan crossover, we're not going to hear the last of it. So I think it's important that people get educated on the issue, though.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I'd add is Emanuel Cleaver as well, a Democrat, is very supportive of what they're trying to do, too. So, Will, thank you, sir.
Will, give me some predictions or talk me through some of the things you and Senator Eslinger are working on that are kind of priorities for your office this session. I know Senator Eslinger has a great background in education, and that's always been a passion of hers. She is another legislator, like we've talked about today, that works with real issues that impact everyday Missourians, but she may not always get the most Facebook likes or hits for legislation she's working on. So give us a little rundown of something you're excited about for this legislative session.
Absolutely. Well, I think the number one bill that I'm excited about the most that Senator Eslinger is partnering with Representative Ed Lewis on is really tackling the teacher shortage and crisis that we're facing here in Missouri, especially with making sure we get the next great crop of teachers here in the state of Missouri. Mandated by the state, the minimum teacher salary starting in Missouri is only $25,000. Now, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a school district that truly starts you at your $25,000. But some schools don't pay much over that, though. And, Missouri is the only state that borders 8 other states. So that becomes an issue on all the edges of Missouri. So if you're, you just graduated from Missouri Southern State University, you're a proud Golden Lion, you grew up in Joplin, your family's from Pineville, and you have an offer from McDonald County to start you at, let's say, $29,000, barely over the basic minimum teacher salary here in Missouri. But Arkansas and Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, they just passed a bill starting teachers at $50,000. Now, maybe you can write off a difference of, I'll make $5,000 less to go teach in my hometown. I like living here. I grew up here. I want to be here. I can justify that loss. It's hard to justify for someone fresh out of college who has their student loans are paying off. I have to make $25,000 less. That's where it starts to become a numbers issues, and why we're seeing a migration of teachers leaving the state of Missouri and going to our border states.
Well, talk to us about the senator's position on, we hear so much in the national news in the country about foreign ownership of farmland, not just in Missouri, but in surrounding states. I think for the average person out there, they think of China, and they've heard the stories about Chinese entities trying to buy farmland adjacent to military bases. But the senator, I know her take on it is this whole process of controlling it more complicated than it needs to be?
I think that's exactly right. I think we talk about complicated issues and trying to explain it quickly. That's one that gets complicated because I think you have to start out. What's the definition of foreign? Are we going to just let's ban just China from owning any sort of land in Missouri. But what happens when you have someone from Missouri that marries someone from Germany or the United Kingdom when they were traveling abroad? They come back here in Missouri. Are they now banned from owning any sort of land in Missouri? Can they now not start their small business because we took away their property rights? Because someone decided to marry someone from another country and they still had their citizenship over there. I think we have to make sure that, one, as a Republican, I don't want to take away anyone's property rights. And two, when we deal with these complex issues, and especially when it comes to the national security, the importance of Fort Leonard Wood and Whiteman Air Force Base can't be understated here in the state of Missouri. So we have to make sure our national security interests are always going to be protected. But we can't be reactionary on every single thing and make these, hasty jumps to conclusion that are going to impact everyday Missourians.
Will Wheeler, you have done a fantastic job talking about pre-filing and real legislation that impacts Missourians with us this morning. One quick question before you go. We've talked about a lot of legislation today, and you hit on the landfill bill, which I think will be a very hot topic in the Missouri Senate. If you have to say your gut instinct, yes or no, as of now, do we get a landfill bill through the Senate before the end of session?
Gut instinct, I say yes, we get it done. Probably not before spring break, but I think that's such an important issue. So many people care about that issue. Something will come to head.
See, I'm gonna go opposite here. I'm gonna go with no, but we'll see who wins out come mid-May.
Well, you know what? If we got sports wagering past two, we'd place a bet on it too, Casey.
That's right. We sure would.
Touche. Will, thanks so much for being on with us this morning. Will Wheeler from Senator Eslinger's office at the state capitol with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Casey, maybe in our last segment when we come back from the break, talk to you about some of your predictions on what's going to happen politically Offsides. Wake up, Mid-Missouri, 93.9 The Eagle, 950 KWS. John Marsh along with Casey Burns this morning. First of all, though, before we hit all of our leftovers, our KWS 1-for-1 holiday food drive next week.
Yeah, it's coming up next Wednesday. We're going to be going 6A to 6P. We're going to have locations set up in Columbia and in Jefferson City. All the information you need to donate is on the radio station's websites, as well as the radio station's Facebook pages. Tons of way you can donate, and we're doing this with Commerce Bank like we do every year. We're helping out the Food Bank of Central and Northeast Missouri, and we had Lindsay Lopez with the Food Bank on a couple weeks ago, and she was talking about how this time of year is always hard for folks, but you know, we kind of know the economy has been not the greatest this year, and you know, maybe a little extra difficult on lots of folks this year. The food bank is serving more people than they ever have before. So
100,000 people a month, she told us.
Yeah, which is mind-blowing if you kind of sit down and think about it. It puts things into perspective. But like I said, all the information to donate is on the radio station's websites. And there's actually ways you can donate today if you don't want to wait until next Wednesday. So go check it out.
But if you want, you can swing by Columbia Mall from 6 to 6 on December 13th. And we'll also be in Jefferson City in front of Buckeye, which used to be Orchulans on Missouri Boulevard. So feel free between 6 and 6 to swing by, bring by your food donations, but more importantly, the cash goes a long, long way with the KWS 1-for-1 holiday food drive. So there.
Hannah, you mentioned the economy. The president keeps touting how strong the economy is, how great the numbers are. Bidenomics, I believe we're calling it. We've had a lot of talks in here on and off air this morning about how that doesn't seem to be the way most Missourians are feeling it now.
I mean, I will say the lower gas prices as of the last couple weeks have been nice, especially for those that commute like I do. But I don't think it's fair to say yet that the economy has made this great bounce back that the Biden administration is touting. I know, Casey, you and I off air were talking about housing prices and how it sounds really terrible, but almost kind of keeping fingers crossed for a crash. Because for folks like me, newlyweds, we're renting right now, and it doesn't really, we don't feel like we're going to be able to purchase a home anytime soon unless something changes with the market.
Yeah, the market is not only just moving so fast and so hot as far as real estate goes, but that coupled with the interest rates, it makes it seem really unattainable for young people. I know millennials get such a bad rap. Well, if you'd quit buying your Starbucks coffees and avocado toast, you could own a home. But my parents never had to pay interest rates in the 8s and 9s when they were financing a house like you or I would have to today.
Well, and folks that, you know, have been in their homes for lots of years, they're not going to be as quick to sell and, you know, have to get something with a much higher interest rate. So the market's just slow, and especially in these small towns where your options are already limited, it's crazy. You see houses going well above asking price.
Yeah, and they're going immediately more often than not, even here in mid-Missouri.
Well, and lots of houses never even officially making it to the market. You know, it's like you have to know someone to even get a house in a lot of these small towns. You have to be tight with real estate agents and sellers, and it's crazy.
There it is. That's Bidenomics in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen.
Woohoo!
How lucky are we?
Well, we're waiting to see, too, you know, if another shoe will drop with the Fed, whether they'll raise it another, you know, a quarter point or not. I think the last time when they examined it, they didn't move ahead on that. But on the other side of it, OPEC last week coming out saying, guess what? You guys with the low gas prices, we're going to cut production.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see these shifts also as we head into an election year. President Biden will be up for re-election. And depending on the economy, if it continues to slow, in my mind it is, between now and next fall, what changes will take place, what gas prices will look like.